Well, thank you everybody for being here today. Thanks for joining us. My name is Skyler McKinley, and I'm going to be moderating today's conversation. I've spent nearly 20 years in Colorado public policy, and thank you very much, I wear sunscreen. I was press secretary to Governor Hickenlooper. I was the founding deputy director of Colorado's cannabis office back when that was interesting, and I've been on more campaigns than I can count. These days, for better or for worse, I work mostly as a lobbyist, which means I moderate a lot of conversations like this one, because lobbyists will do anything to be in the room. I hate to tell a group of YIMBYs and transit advocates this, but you probably know me best for being the spokesman for AAA, the American Automobile Association. I say that, though, because in my experience, the very interesting thing about these complicated challenges in housing and transportation is that they don't break down along the lines that you'd expect. People are complicated. The way they choose to live, how they get around, how they choose to live is complicated. Our policy choices reflect that. Ostensibly, I am the lobbyist for Big Car. You'd think they could have done better, but alas. And yet, I walked here today from my place in Congress Park. I will walk back home. That's 4 miles that I'll walk through this beautiful city because I don't personally think that the car makes a whole lot of sense for transportation in the urban core, regardless of how AAA feels about it. I'm willing to bet I'm not the only walking contradiction in this room either. There are probably folks from the ban cars crowd who drove here today. There's transit advocates who were running late and had to Uber. There were people from northern Colorado who thought they'd try the bus. There's suburban car lovers who took the train. Our choices, and ultimately that's what we're talking about here, reflect the nuances that these conversations demand. There is no one-size-fits-all answer for policy in Colorado on any issue. To wit, we're a big, complicated state. In my day job, I'm a lobbyist here in Denver in the capital city. In my night job, I own a little saloon in Oak Creek, Colorado. It's about 3 hours from here in the rural heart of the Yampa Valley. If you couldn't tell from the get-up, I'm trying my best to bridge the rural-urban divide single-handedly. Culturally, Oak Creek, population of about 900, is about as far from the Denver Athletic Club as you can get. In fact, this building is about the size of Oak Creek. And if you walked into my bar and told someone that you were a YIMBY, or for that matter a NIMBY, they'd probably kick your ass. That's why I'm glad our conversation today is not going to stop at the Denver city limits, because here's what I hear every single week at the Capitol: transportation and housing. And you want to guess the number one topic over rounds at my bar in Oak Creek? It's wolves. Number one is wolves. But number two is transportation and housing. And I can't tell you how tired I am about talking about wolves. So today we're going to talk about transportation and housing, which, short of wolves, is the connective tissue for every other policy challenge in Colorado right now. Before we do that, I want to thank our hosts, YIMBY Denver, Greater Denver Transit, and the Denver Bicycle Lobby, with support from Centennial State Prosperity and the Greater YIMBY Movement, and our sponsors, Cardell Homes, Transform RTD, Shea Properties, Otten Johnson, and of course, AAA. Just for my own ego for a moment, how many of you are AAA members? See? America's second largest lobby group, second only to the Catholic Church. Anyway, if you will join me for a round of applause for our sponsors and hosts as I welcome up Andrea Horvath from Otten Johnson, who's going to join us on stage and introduce our candidates.
Thank you, Skyler. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to YIMBY Denver for organizing this event and bringing together all of these people who care deeply about our state's future, and for your work for expanding housing opportunity in Colorado. As Skyler mentioned, my name is Andrea Horvath. I am a shareholder at Otten Johnson, Colorado's premier real estate and land use law firm. For more than 40 years, we have worked alongside developers, builders, and community leaders across the Rocky Mountain West to help bring real estate projects from concept into existence. As a land use firm, we see every day how thoughtful policy and collaboration can turn into real homes and real communities. My colleagues and I help our clients navigate zoning codes, subdivision regulations, and public hearings on the path to project approvals. We believe that building more housing and creating more opportunity is essential to ensuring Colorado remains a place where everyone can thrive. The issues being discussed today aren't abstract policy debates. They determine whether families can afford to stay in their communities, whether young people can build their futures here, and whether Colorado continues to grow as a vibrant, inclusive place to live. That's why today's conversation matters so much and why we're proud to support this important work. We are fortunate to have two distinguished leaders here to share their respective visions. Here is what each campaign says about their candidate. Phil Weiser is a proven fighter for Colorado and a lifelong public servant dedicated to putting people first. As Colorado's Attorney General, Phil has consistently defended the rule of law, protected our democracy, and taken on bad actors who ripped off families, raised costs, and abused their power. When the Trump administration threatened Colorado's values, freedoms, and constitutional authority, Phil is not staying on the sidelines. He is fighting back and suing the Trump administration to protect immigrants, voting rights, and the integrity of our democracy. As the son and grandson of Holocaust survivors, Phil has dedicated his career to ensuring that all people, no matter their gender, ethnicity, faith, or who they love, are free from discrimination, hatred, and oppression. His commitment on these core American values is deeply rooted in his family's story and lived experience. Phil's commitment to justice was shaped early in his career while clerking for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That experience reinforced his belief that the law must be a shield for the vulnerable, a check on abuse of power, and a tool to advance freedom and equality for all. Michael Bennet has served Colorado in the U.S. Senate since 2009 and has established himself as an independent leader who has delivered for working families and children, helping cut child poverty nearly in half through his expanded child tax credit, securing over $1 billion for housing and transit projects in Colorado, and writing clean energy tax provisions that create jobs and lower costs. He has established a reputation for genuine outreach and building meaningful coalitions to deliver results, whether strengthening rural economies, investing in broadband and infrastructure, supporting veterans, and securing resources for Colorado farmers and ranchers. Michael is running for governor to protect Colorado from Donald Trump's attacks and has released his Build for the Future agenda, which includes ambitious plans to build more housing, modernize and invest in transit systems across Colorado, and strengthen Colorado's energy economy with affordable and clean energy. Prior to serving in the Senate, Michael was a national leader on education, continuing the work he began as superintendent of Denver Public Schools, where he turned around struggling schools and expanded opportunities for Colorado kids. Michael helped balance Denver's budget as chief of staff to then Mayor John Hickenlooper. He and his wife Susan have raised their 3 daughters in Denver. I know that both of these candidates understand the urgency of the challenges we face, and I'm eager to hear more about how each would lead on these defining issues. Thank you all for being here, and let's have a meaningful conversation.
Okie dokie, this will be fun. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, I want to cover some ground rules for the audience and for the candidates. Remember that I own a cowboy saloon in a coal mining town of 900 people, and I'm not afraid to 86 someone. So let's stick to these rules as best as we can so we all get along, and that's the bar business. To begin, both candidates will get 2 minutes for an opening statement about how these issues in transportation and housing factor into your life, into your agenda, and your priorities if you're elected governor. Then we're going to go into a question round led by 2 subject matter experts from YIMBY Denver and Greater Denver Transit. We have Kevin Matthews from YIMBY Denver and Saigopal Rangaraj from Greater Denver Transit, who will be asking some questions with some real substance. And I got to tell you, as an occupational hazard, I have to go to a lot of these things. Not as many as you guys, but enough where I sort of know the flow of these. I have never seen questions with as much substance and as much meat on the bones as the ones that will be asked today. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. If one of our experts has a follow-up, they'll ask these questions, I should say. You'll get 90 seconds each to answer, then you'll get 30 seconds to respond. We ask that you don't interrupt each other because you've got time to respond. Finally, if one of our experts has a follow-up, you're going to get 30 seconds to respond to that. So with that, Senator Bennet won the coin flip and asked to give his introduction second. So we're going to turn to Attorney General Weiser for about 2 minutes on an introduction on how these issues play out in his agenda. Attorney General Weiser.
I am the product of a family who came here as refugees, a first-generation American. My mom and my grandmother were born in my mom was born in a Nazi concentration camp on April 13th, 1945. And in one generation from that birth, I've been able to work for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, serve as an advisor to Barack Obama, and now as your Attorney General and your next governor. I believe in the commitment of opportunity for all, and that we're at a crucial moment for this republic. And I love our state. And I believe in the good people of Colorado to meet this moment. And we need leadership that stands up against this lawless, bullying administration who I've had to sue 54 times and counting. And just yesterday, we won an important case involving the tariffs, which are jacking up prices for lumber and making housing and other goods more expensive in Colorado. I've taken on the energy secretary just last week who's holding back $600 million in energy grants we need, someone who Senator Bennet had voted for to be a cabinet secretary. I took on the transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, for holding back EV infrastructure funding. I'm willing to stand up against this administration and fight for Colorado. I also bring proven executive leadership experience here in Colorado, addressing the opioid crisis in a way that's been praised from John Oliver to Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. I'm ready to do this job from day one. Colorado is an important choice to make about what's best for Colorado. We've got a 17-year U.S. senator with deep experience in immigration reform, in federal tax law, Ukraine, and more. There's a bumper sticker out there. Phil Weiser for governor, Michael Bennet for Senate. Thank you very much.
Senator Bennet, you're up.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with all of you. It's wonderful to be back in Denver, Phil. It's great to be with you up here, and it's nice to be home. I apologize. I am really under the weather, but I did not want to miss the opportunity to be here with all of you today. I want you to know I have been tested for every single thing you could be tested for, so please don't worry that I'm contagious, because I'm not. Second, not far from here was the Emily Griffith Opportunity School, which was the vocational education training at the Denver Public Schools, a school district that I had the great fortune to be the superintendent for. And 15 years ago, when I was superintendent in Denver, I had faculty meetings every single day. And I never met a teacher who didn't live in Denver. It was one of the great things about being in Denver was that unlike Seattle, unlike San Francisco, unlike Portland, you could actually live in the community where you teach. Today, if you meet teachers from Denver who live there, it's almost unimaginable that we could afford to live in Denver. In the Roaring Fork Valley, I have sat in rooms while teachers were crying because they had won the housing lottery administered by their school district, and crying because they'd lost the housing lottery administered by their school district. I think there's something profoundly immoral about a society where our teachers cannot afford to live in our community unless they win a lottery to get housing. That is why I'm running for governor. I have put out an ambitious goal, more ambitious than anybody running in this nation, that says no Coloradan should ever have to spend more than 30% of their income on housing, whether they own it or whether they're renting it. We need a transportation and transit system that will support that ambitious goal,
and so,
that I look forward to discussing with you today.
Thank you, and we'll get into the substance of a lot of this right now. With that, I'm going to turn it to Kevin Matthews from YIMBY Denver, and a reminder about the format. You will get 90 seconds each to respond to this question. From there, you'll have 30 seconds to respond each, and there may be a follow-up. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kevin, and Attorney General Weiser, you'll go first for this round.
Thank you both for being here today. You have each put out housing plans as part of your platform. Senator Bennett's plan, with regards to starter homes, states, you will work with local governments and builders to provide the flexibility needed to make starter homes possible again by speeding approvals and construction, increasing density, and reducing lot sizes, land costs, and construction expenses. Attorney General Weiser's plan states that you, quote, will work with lawmakers and sign into law new policies to incentivize local governments to lower building costs, lower fees, and guarantee quicker turnarounds for the housing we need most, especially affordable rental housing units and reasonably priced starter homes. Can you talk about why you think your preferred method will work and what you see as the shortcomings of your opponent's plan?
Let me go quickly here because there's a lot to cover. In our plan, we talk about a key failing we have in Colorado, which is a fragmented system of supporting building housing people can afford. The Turner Center from UC Berkeley made this point clearly in a recent study. States like Minnesota, states like Massachusetts have made it easier with one-stop shopping to get the support they need to enable building housing. Working with our state takes too long. I'm going to have one chief housing officer report to me to make sure that we're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we've got to get local governments on the right page with respect to starter homes. It's not okay to have permitting fees of $150,000 that make it impossible to build starter homes, or permitting processes that take forever. We also need more innovation and creativity, like modular homes, which can be 20% as quick and 30% cheaper. 40% of homes in Sweden are modular. I'm excited to develop and build on work like Adamberger Construction here in Colorado. As for Senator Bennett's plan, 2 areas I'd call out where there are real shortcomings. How to protect renters. As I've said, and we'll talk more about this, renters are getting mistreated with junk fees, with algorithms fixing rents $136 a month extra in Denver because of it. We need to take that on, and we need to make sure we support rural communities as well, who also are being underserved.
And that's time. Senator Bennet, I'll restate the question. Can you talk about why you think your preferred method on increasing housing supply will work, and what you see as the shortcomings of your opponent's plan?
Well, I'd say first the shortcomings of my opponent's plan are that his ambition is to build half the amount of housing we need over the next 10 years. That's a profound shortcoming. If you want the boldest housing plan in the nation, that is a housing plan that says that we have to get to 30% of your income for our housing. 1. 2, I don't need a lecture about evictions. I've been working on evictions for many, many years. I wrote the first bill that was ever introduced in the United States Congress to deal with evictions, to address evictions, to learn from what I knew from being superintendent of schools, which is that damage that's done to our society is captured in Matthew Desmond's book so well, the damage that's done for entire communities and societies, not to mention the children that I used to work for in the Denver Public Schools, if eviction is a remedy. Those are cheap talking points, Phil, and it's an embarrassment. Much more important point is that if we don't have a governor that is going to stop coloring inside the lines of what we've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years, the housing prices in Colorado are just going to continue to double. And working people across this state are going to spend 40%, 50% of their housing on income. The reason I've drawn the line where I have is that I don't believe you can live a middle-class life if you can't afford to feed your children, or if you can't save, because you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing.
You'll have another 30 seconds to add some color, but first, so will Attorney General Weiser.
Anyone here rent from either Greystar or 4-Star Realty ever? Raise your hand. So you may have been charged these junk fees, deceptive fees, that you didn't know you were getting. My commitment to getting you money back, which I've done, millions of dollars, is not a cheap talking point. It's delivering results for people by taking on those who would prey on people. That is a core commitment you will get from me as your next governor.
Thank you. Senator Bennet.
I would say it is at best a half measure. I'm not against it, Phil, but how are you going to get to a place in our state where teachers and working people all across Colorado can afford to live here, where people aren't in tears in our town hall meetings because they believe their kids will never be able to afford to live in this state? There is not a county in Colorado where anybody thinks their kids are going to be able to afford to live here. That is why I am running for governor. I will fix that problem,
And that's
working with all of you.
time. I'm going to turn it back to Kevin.
Thank you. As a follow-up, when testifying on housing bills of the last few years, I've occasionally heard local officials pull bill sponsors aside and say, don't tell the Colorado Municipal League this, but this bill would be a godsend for us. We really need the housing. How does your plan kind of help the closeted local government YIMBYs who are dealing with their own political constraints?
Attorney General Weiser, 30 seconds.
We need to make sure that we're creating the overall environment that we build dense housing, communities where people can walk, taking advantage of infill opportunities, and making sure it's near transit. We can find ways to create, as you put it, the political cover, the legal environment that local governments can get on board. I've got experience now as 8 years as Attorney General working with local governments, knowing what it means to get people on the same page. I recognize that takes work. It takes building relationships. I'm proud to have more local and state current and former officials
And that's
endorsing
time.
me than any candidate in this race.
Senator Bennet, 30 seconds. How would you help those closeted local YIMBYs?
Listen, I believe that there are local officials all over our state, county commissioners and mayors, who want to do exactly what I want to do when it comes to building more housing. I don't think they're closeted. I think they want to have a partner in the governor's office who understands a one-size-fits-all approach all over the state of Colorado would never work for Denver and for Lyman and for Grand Junction. That's a fact. But somebody who has the deep relationships with them to unlock the imagination at the local level, to act with boldness,
And
that's what we
time.
need to do.
Just in the interest of fairness, I'm going to turn it back to Kevin.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. So both of your plans focus in part on helping people afford housing. Senator Bennet, you propose to provide support for first-time homebuyers, expand down payment assistance and rent-to-own pathways, and help working families afford housing. Attorney General Weiser, in a similar fashion, you propose to expand support for first-time homebuyers, make home ownership more accessible through targeted financial assistance, and protect renters and help families stay in their homes. But a recent analysis from Thrive Economics and Housing Forward Colorado found that when the Denver metro area built 20,000 housing units in a single year, rents fell, and they fell the most for lower income renters in older buildings. So if elected governor, do you believe increasing the supply of market rate housing should also be a central responsibility of your administration to address affordability? And if so, what specifically do you plan to make happen? And where does your opponent's plan fall short?
Senator Bennet, first up.
I would say, again, I think that all the things you talked about are important parts of the plan, but you asked, I think, if I didn't mistake your question, whether the key is to build market rate housing in Colorado. I actually think we know what the market will do in Colorado, which is build housing for rich people. That's not what we need in Colorado. We need housing for working people. We need housing, we need affordable housing. We need to be able to take the existing stock of affordable housing and have it last for another generation. We need to make sure that we've got a governor who is focused on how we do the imaginative financing that's required, use the state and public lands across the states required to create the density, to create the opportunity for people to be able to use cheaper housing products, to be able to build housing. Those are all the things we need to do to give the next generation of Coloradans any shot at all of home ownership. So I would say categorically your question is wrong, and the answer is we have to build housing for working people and for people that are joining our workforce, and we have failed to do it, I'm sorry to say, with the Democratic administration in Colorado for the last 15 years. We need to put a governor in who's going to make this their #1 priority, and it's mine.
Thank you. Attorney General Weiser, I'll restate the question. Do you believe increasing the supply of market rate housing should be a central responsibility to address affordability? And if so, how will you make it happen?
This is a very important point. I agree. We need more market rate housing that provides starter homes. When I bought my first home, it was a starter home. It was a market rate home because the environment was generating the types of homes we needed in dense areas, that I could walk to places, I could get transit. What has happened in the last, particularly 16 years, since the Great Recession, the market got broke. We got to fix it. What's going on? I mentioned this about permitting fees. Let me give Larimer County as an example. If the permitting fee is $150,000 to build a home, you're not building a starter home under $500,000. It's not the market that's the problem, it's the permitting fees. Part of that is how we manage water in Colorado, something I've got deep expertise, and I'm going to be able to help effectively lead as governor. Also, when the state is providing support for people to build housing that can be sold at market rate, but it's so hard to get access to the benefits, it slows it. And finally, we're innovators in Colorado. We're collaborators, which means we should be leading on lower cost forms of housing like modular housing. I mentioned before, Sweden has 40% of their housing as modular. We're less than 1%. We can be a leader in Colorado. I'm excited to lead as the next governor.
Sweden also has really good meatballs in their department stores, but that's just for me. Senator Bennet, 30 seconds.
I would say, first of all, stipulate to the red tape. It's all over my plan. We got to cut red tape, cut red tape. By the way, adding more bureaucracy to the state doesn't seem to be, cutting red tape, which is what Phil has suggested. I will be the housing czar of our state if you elect me governor. Second, Phil said it again. He said the market's not the problem. The market has created the massive asset inflation that has made it impossible for young people and working people in our mountain communities to live there. It has made it impossible
That's
for
time.
teachers
Attorney General
and
Weiser.
working people in the Denver metro area to live here. The failure to
That's time.
recognize that.
We'll
I'll
get back
finish
into
my-
it. Yeah, thank you. Attorney General Weiser.
It's important that government figure out how to enable the market to work to achieve the results that we need. That can be how government provides incentives, provides opportunities and oversight. The government can and will build some housing that is for people on low income, LIHTC housing. It's an important part of the mix. But we're going to need to build a lot more housing that's at the market rate. We need developers building types of housing we need.
That's time.
I've got a plan to do that.
I'm going to turn it back to Kevin.
Thank you. I want to move on to another question that kind of touches on the topic you were just talking about. So this is actually something in regards to something President Trump said in a recent cabinet meeting when discussing the topic of affordability. He said he doesn't want housing prices to fall because he wants to protect homeowner equity. If there's a trade-off between rising home values and making housing more affordable, what is your responsibility as governor? Is it to protect home values or is it to make housing more affordable? And how would your policies reflect that choice?
Attorney General Weiser.
The idea that Donald Trump is saying he wants to keep housing prices high is an example of him saying the truth. He is trying to keep housing prices high through the tariffs that make housing more expensive, by withholding grants that we need in Colorado to help us build the energy infrastructure we need, the transportation infrastructure, and more. And when it comes to taking on the Trump administration, I've done it again and again, and I will do it as governor. As for this idea about whether or not we should be building housing that people can afford, of course we should. We need more housing, and we need the right type of housing. Density where people can walk, where people can get access to transit, is an opportunity for us. We can lead in this area in Colorado. The idea that some people may have some of their homes not as valued as much, if that's the side effect, so be it. But what I am concerned about right now is we're losing population. If you look at the most recent numbers, we had the lowest population growth since 1990. And when I talk to young people, why might you leave? Their number one answer, I don't know that I can afford to live here, to buy the type of starter home that I could buy. We got to make sure we fix it. I got a plan to do that as governor.
Senator Bennet, I'll restate the question. What do you think your responsibility is as governor? To protect home values or to make housing more affordable? And how would your policies reflect that choice?
I'll answer the question directly. We need to make housing more affordable. And the reality is that people of my generation and Phil's generation have benefited from a ridiculous increase in our asset prices, and we have rolled up the carpet on everybody else. That is a fact, and it is no more true in Colorado than it is anywhere else. I don't think Phil understands how the market works, but the reality is when you've seen the massive intervention that has resulted in after the last housing crisis and during COVID, and then the Federal Reserve keeping rates at zero, year after year after year, to inflate the stock market, to inflate the assets of people living in the wealthiest neighborhoods, in the largest houses in Colorado, very clearly to the detriment of the people who work in our restaurants, who work in our schools, who serve in our police departments and our firefighters. You better believe we need a governor who understands that dynamic and is not going in there to prop up the asset values of the people that have benefited so mightily over the last 10 or 15 years, but figuring out how to build assets here for the next generation. Because they don't have a question about whether they can live here. They know they cannot live here. And I want my own children to be able to live here. And I want the children of the teachers that I wish to work for in our public schools to make a home
Attorney General
here
Weiser,
as well.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
I do know how markets work. I also know how markets sometimes fail to work, market failure, which can happen when a corporate landlord is fixing prices with other landlords, making housing less affordable, which is why I've gone after those bad actors, held them to account. The use of junk fees is not a half measure. It's jacking up rents by 30 or 40%. I've taken it on. I've pushed legislation. I'll keep fighting to make markets work for
Senator
people.
Bennett, 30 seconds.
I would just say this. I admire the work Phil has done as our Attorney General. We are not going to sue our way to more affordable housing in this state. We are not going to sue our way to better health care in this state. We are not going to sue our way to a better set of climate policies or protect our public lands. We are not going to sue our way to making this state a place where the next generation of Coloradans can call home. And that is a fact.
Kevin, back to you.
Thank you. In 2024, Denver's Regional Council of Governments, or DRCOG, produced a regional housing needs assessment stating that the Denver metro region needs to build 511,000 units by 2050 to meet current and future housing needs. Do you believe it is fair if some cities are building housing while others are not?
And that one goes to Attorney General Weiser.
No. Let me use the rest of my time to respond to the idea that we can't sue our way out of challenges we're facing. First, of the 54 lawsuits against this Trump administration, which I know Senator Bennett has continued to say are not a solution, there's 600,000 Coloradans right now who have food stamps because I successfully sued the agriculture secretary who wanted to take them away. That agriculture secretary, by the way, was voted for and continues to be supported by Senator Bennet, who stands by that vote. That agriculture secretary tried to fire Forest Service firefighters in Colorado. I sued and got them their jobs back as well. For those who are looking for access to gender-affirming care, I was one of 4 attorneys general to bring a lawsuit to make sure they can get life-saving health care, and we won that suit as well. And for those building houses or buying food or appliances, Americans were paying $1,000 more a year in these legal tariffs. We just won that suit as well. So when you think about what you want in a governor and their willingness and ability to stand up against this administration using the law, think Phil Weiser for governor, Michael Bennet for Senate.
That's time. I serve on various DRCOG committees and sort of understand the unique importance of DRCOG, so I would love an answer to this question, and I'll note that wasn't one. Senator Bennett, do you believe with regard to these housing assessments on the metro need that it's fair if some cities are building housing and others are not?
I don't think that's fair. I think that is why we should have a statewide goal, as I said earlier, that's a function of people's income. I don't believe there will be a one-size-fits-all solution to that. I've said that over and over again. I think the imagination comes from the local level, harnessing that, mobilizing that, using the bully pulpit of the governor's office to push people and push people and push people and say, I don't care whether you think you're the most conservative person in Colorado or the most progressive person. If our children cannot afford to live here, which they can't, we have a huge moral problem that we have to fix. And I'll amend Phil's bumper sticker with the last 10 seconds of my answer to say, I think Phil Weiser is doing a good job as Attorney General, and I think is doing a good job running for Attorney General by talking about all the things that he would do to continue to sue people left and right to try to get things done. That is not the leadership we need to solve the problems that we are facing. And these are not issues that are going to solve themselves. If they had solved themselves, we wouldn't be sitting here with the current administration in Denver with a $650,000 median house. We wouldn't be sitting here with the 5th highest child care costs in America. We wouldn't be sitting here with a healthcare system that is getting worse for struggling families, not better. And that is the leadership that I am offering as your next governor to address these challenges.
I would just jump in here to say that as the AAA guy, I am thrilled we are spending so much time talking about bumper stickers. I did not expect that at the transit debate. With that, Attorney General Weiser, 30 seconds.
Here's the point about how housing works. It's interconnected. It's impossible for one community to have workers they need if they're not allowing them to live there, and then other communities say, I'm not going to allow them to live there, that's how you get people driving an hour and a half because they can't afford anywhere near where they work. This is going to require regional leadership. Look at the way I did this in the opioid crisis. It's a national model. I'll bring that to housing.
That's time. Senator Bennet?
I think I'm good.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, back to you.
So you both agree that everybody should be contributing. So as a quick follow-up, should there be any consequences for the communities that refuse to plan for housing or not?
Attorney General Weiser.
We're going to have to figure out how we create regional cooperation, regional planning, regional commitments where everyone is part of this work. I know we're going to talk more about RTD and how that fits in transit. The same concept goes in housing, and ideally you're building housing in denser areas near transit. And so you've got to make sure you're creating the right incentives, the right oversight, the right forms of accountability. I've done that work in opioids. I know I can do it in housing.
Senator Bennet.
I'm not sure I'm using RTD as my model for how to build housing that's affordable for people in the state of Colorado. I do think, to your question about punishments for folks that don't get, I think there is so much goodwill and so much leadership in our state among the county commissioners, among the mayors, in the private sector all over the state of Colorado. They just feel like they've been totally ignored by our current governor when it comes to questions around this.
On this question.
Okay.
I will turn it to Kevin. I think we've got one more on housing.
Great. Thank you, Skyler. The National Zoning Atlas found that nearly 70% of land zoned for housing in Colorado effectively bans the most affordable options like apartments, townhomes, condos in wealthy neighborhoods. Should it be legal to build new, smaller, multi-unit homes like fourplexes or sixplexes on your block?
Senator Bennet.
I would say absolutely. Twoplexes, fourplexes, sixplexes, all of it. And I really admire the work that Lakewood has done in this regard, and I think that's going to turn out to be a model for the rest of the country, and I think a model for our state. Again, it's not going to be about a centralized, edict from the central office. That's not what I'm about, whether it's housing or anything else. But I do think engaging the imagination of people all across this state to make sure that that kind of multifamily housing is available. So to make sure that lot sizes can be restricted so that people can actually afford to be able to live here. And by people, I mean in particular the next generation, but also so that people like our seniors who today are stuck in the houses, in a lot of cases, the houses where they've raised their kids have moved on. I think our seniors in this state need a whole new form of starter home for them to be able to start their retirement and stay here in Colorado and know they're going to be able to live near where their kids and grandkids live. And we're going to need those kind of creative policies to be able to drive that kind of housing stock.
Thank you. Attorney General Weiser.
Let me continue with my theme of regional collaboration and the way we've done this work addressing the opioid crisis, which is we've brought these regions together to learn from one another, building on the goodwill and the expertise, showing what success looks like. And in my neighborhood, to answer your question, we've got a successful tale in Lowry. Let me read to you, happy to be a community representative here. It's a unique mixed-use community redevelopment infill project with dense and walkable neighborhoods. With nearly 3,000 single-family homes, duplexes, condos, apartments, Lowry has something for everybody. This is the type of walkable, dense neighborhoods we need more of. We need to learn how we do this. We're going to have more opportunities all across Colorado. The type of leadership I've brought on this opioid crisis has lifted our whole state up, and why we saw a 31% decline in fentanyl deaths in 2024. I believe in Colorado. I've worked with Colorado leaders to get things done in water, public safety, opioids, and more. I'm ready to take on this work as our next governor.
That's time. Senator Bennet, 30 seconds if you'd like it.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Great. Attorney General Weiser?
We're good.
Great. Kevin, I think you can get one more in if you'd like on your topic.
Oh, great. So NIMBYs often oppose new housing for reasons like, NIMBYs often oppose new housing for reasons like neighborhood character or traffic, and often successfully kill new housing. Are there any NIMBY concerns that you find legitimate?
Attorney General Weiser.
I do believe that zoning can play an important role because sometimes people have less desirable land uses that can be put right near urban neighborhoods. I've been to Commerce City with Cultivando to see what is happening in those communities that literally border upon refineries, and a refinery that has failed to follow the law and that has harmed those communities. And so as you think about zoning and what is next to what, it is important that we are planning ahead, thoughtfully protecting people. We can do this and provide dense housing options like we're doing right now in Lowry. So the idea for me is, how do we have community input? How do we develop and advance best practice together that builds a Colorado that works for all of us? I know we can do it. I've done it in other areas. I can do it as governor.
Senator Bennet, are there any NIMBY concerns? And for the audience, I think we all know, but this is NIMBY is shorthand for not in my backyard, anti-development mindset. Are there any NIMBY concerns you find legitimate?
Look, obviously, whenever you have any sort of change, there are going to be concerns. And I think that concerns are legitimate. You know, we're going to have to wrestle, and we're going to have to make some choices and some hard decisions. And I've said very clearly up here today where I'm going to put my priority, which is on making sure that we are building housing for working people in our state and for the next generation of Coloradans. And even where that comes at the cost of seeing some equity value erode from the people in the biggest houses who are, feel like they maybe have benefited over the last 10 or 15 years. And I do think, obviously, zoning has a value to play. I don't think that anybody would want to live next to a refinery. But I also think that if we would pull ourselves into the 21st century, we might learn that places where there are really diverse communities, both ethnically and in terms of commercial and residential, places where there's much more activity happening closer to where people live, that where there are places where there are places that the zoning code historically separated government functions and commercial functions and residential functions, that we're finding that we're living in communities that are much more vibrant, where those functions are coming into closer proximity to one another. That's one of the excitements.
And that's time.
Okay.
30 extra seconds for either of you if you'd like it. Attorney General Weiser? Senator Bennet, do you want to finish your point?
I just want to invite Phil to some places on the West Slope and some other places. We can see that Lowry is not necessarily the answer to what we're trying to solve here, because what we really do need to build is the 21st century communities that will work all over the state of Colorado, in rural Colorado, on the Western Slope, the Eastern Plains, and also in the Denver metro area.
Thank you.
I'll take those 30 seconds
All right.
if that's okay.
All right. It's out of format, but we'll do it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. First, in the inviting to the Western Slope, we've got a Western Slope swing with forums like this in Colorado Springs, in Durango, Northern Colorado, in Grand Junction, when Congress is not in session. We invite you to come join me there to have these conversations all across Colorado. It shouldn't only happen in the Front Range. And I have spent all those times in the Western Slope listening hard, knowing exactly how different communities work. I welcome lots of different types of development. I've seen them.
That's
I'll
time.
promote them all across Colorado.
And anytime you want to come to the high country, either of you, I know a great bar in Oak Creek, Colorado, population 900. We don't use West Slope, though. We think that's Grand Junction. We call ourselves the high country, but it's a minor distinction. With that, I would love to move into the transit portion of our discussion, and this will be moderated and led by subject matter expert Rangaraj.
I just want to point out that I got this cold flying to Durango last Thursday, so we're good there.
In any event, our subject matter expert, Saigopal Rangaraj, is going to lead this conversation now about transit, which of course is interlinked with housing, so some of the topics may resurface.
Thanks. First of all, thanks, Kevin, for those really in-depth and honestly truly amazing questions on housing. I want to facilitate a relatively smooth and easy transition or transfer into the transit section of this conversation. And my first question is about your past experience with transit. So we want our audience to get to know you. And as people, as individuals, what is your past experience with transit? When was the last time you personally took public transit in Colorado? And based on that experience, what was one thing that you think works well today and one thing that could use some improvement?
Senator Bennet.
I took the number 6 bus like 2 or 3 days ago with this illness, so that's the most recent time that I've taken it from downtown to my house. I would say my personal experience, I think what comes to mind is being there on the ground floor when we passed fast tracks for the first time 20 years ago and helping lead that effort. My effort to save the Southwest Chief, the Amtrak train that's so important to Trinidad and to rural Colorado that we were able to protect and save. The $66 million that I brought to Front Range Passenger Rail that the Trump administration is now taking away. Fighting to make sure that Mountain Rail had access to the tracks that it needs to be able to be a success. Bringing more than $30 million to RAFTA in the Roaring Fork Valley. Bringing $150 million to bus rapid transit on Colfax, which, by the way, is a half-a-mile walk from my home. I suppose I would say all of those things have been part of my personal experience with transit in our state. And the reason I want to be your next governor is so that we can bring these pieces together to support the state in a way that allows working people all over Colorado to live near where they work, to raise their children near where they work, and can rely on the kind of transit systems that we built in the 20th century.
I'm going to hand it over to Attorney General Weiser with the same question. By the way, for the audience, I have to tell you, somebody who sort of has a likability complex, it's really hard talking over these guys. But I will keep it up and turn it to Attorney General Weiser to answer that same question. When was the last time you took public transit in Colorado? And based on that experience, what's one thing that works well today and what needs improvement?
I took the train from the airport to Central Park on Thursday, and what that train has that I would say is a model giving people access to the type of public transit they want. There's a reason that the Mustang service is so popular and has been growing. We need to meet people where they are with special opportunities, whether it's how you can take transit to a football game, or how can you make sure that transit's available where and when you need it. This train is a great example of what that can be like. We've got to be asking this question as we look at making good on some promises, like that Boulder has been paying and working to get access to public transit. They haven't had it. We need to make sure that happens. We've got to make sure we're delivering on the promise of public transit that people can use. We've been able to use it from our house when we've got all 4 of us there. And obviously, we're sharing different cars and finding ways. We have the ability to get transit used. We got to make sure we're in touch with what people want, so providing it where and how they want it.
30 seconds to either of you if you'd like to add any color.
I would just say, you're welcome, Phil. when for the money that I brought back to build that train to the airport. In the early days of the train, by the way, half the time it wasn't running, and I referred to it as John Hickenlooper's train on the time that it wasn't running, but I referred to it as my train the time that it was running. You're welcome. And I'd say personally, again, I'm glad Phil's family's using it. The number 6, the number 8. I know Susan uses the 24 bus all the time to get to DU,
That's
where she
30
does
seconds.
her work.
Attorney General Weiser.
And you can thank me even more by staying in the Senate, where next fall, when we take the Senate, Michael can be the chair of the Agriculture Committee, bringing leadership and building on the experience. Having a senior senator with this level of knowledge and relationships, the ability to deliver for Colorado is not anything to sneeze at. We've got to figure out what's the best play for Colorado, getting the right people in the right positions. I want a senator who keeps bringing back for Colorado.
I'm glad the bumper sticker didn't come up, but I will turn it to Saigopal for the next question.
Amazing. And we will get to a lot of those issues that you touched on. To look forward, we first need to look back. And my next question is about fast track, something everyone, a lot of people in Colorado have had many nightmares about. Since 2004, when voters approved a sales tax increase known as fast tracks, taxpayers in the Denver metro region have now been paying a 1% sales tax to fund RTD. This has resulted in $5.5 billion of transit investment, including many of the lines that we've talked about, as well as new bus service. However, substantial sections of fast tracks remain unbuilt. What will you do as governor to rebuild trust in public transit? And how do we ensure that future transit investments are delivered as promised?
This one will go to Attorney General Weiser first.
It's very important that government does what we say we're going to do. And as I worked on my plans to say about how much housing we could build, yes, I didn't pick building all 80,000 units that we needed because I looked at it and said getting half of that was an incredibly aggressive goal that I want us to be able to keep. Government needs to think hard when we make promises, can we keep them? And then we got to work hard to make sure that we make good on the promises that we've made. And in RTD, with the example I mentioned in Boulder, that was a fail. And we've got to do better. And we've got to build faith with the voters. We've also got to make sure, per my earlier point, that we're listening to the public about what type of transit options they want. And we're providing value like the Mustang service. Figure out what's working, double down on it, and then we've got to be able to make the case, and this is an important case to make. Public transit, even for those who aren't using it, helps all of us by making our communities more livable, by making it possible for people who are on a tighter income to live and work in our communities. We've got to make sure we're building a society that works for all of us. Public transit is a core part of it. We've got to make it work.
Senator Bennet, same question, and I can restate it if you'd like. What will you do as governor to rebuild public trust in public transit, and how do we ensure that future transit investments are delivered as promised?
Well, first let me say, I was there on Election Day in 2004 in a plywood fake, or a fake plywood, the plywood was real, but a fake fast tracks bus with a train with a conductor's hat on my head, running around downtown Denver saying, get out the vote, vote for fast tracks. And I think that it is wonderful that we made the investment that we made. But I think that it's time for us to update it for the century that we're living in. And there is a lot of dissatisfaction, not just on the Boulder point, actually. There's daily dissatisfaction with people who believe that it is not serving them well, it is not serving them effectively. There are deep concerns, I think, across the state about whether or not it's governed in the way that would be most useful to Colorado, and whether or not it's aligned well to our other transit and transportation priorities. And I want to say we have to make our public transit system work for our state, because if we don't, it'll be one more reason why Colorado is completely unaffordable for people, for working people to live, whether they live in urban or rural parts of the state, and we've got to take it on.
Thank you. 30 seconds back to Attorney General Weiser.
We're probably going to get to this point, but let me preview it. Senator Bennet mentioned rural parts of our state. We're getting ready to close down a coal plant in Craig, Colorado. Despite what Chris Wright may say, we're going to fight his effort to keep it open in court. We're going to win. We need to make sure we do right by that community. And building mountain rail that's going to provide new opportunities for a critical part of Colorado has got to be part of our transportation future. We've got to make sure our public transit works for all of
That's
Colorado.
time, Senator Bennet.
I'm glad to have had a record in Northwest Colorado bringing more than $35 million to Craig and to Moffett to try to help diversify the economy up there. And I think that we're going to have to continue to do that work. I'm the only candidate in this race, or in the country for that matter, that has called for an economy-wide price on carbon, which I think will begin to move us forward, begin to move this conversation forward. Another massive distinction between the campaign.
That's time. I'm going to turn it back to Saigopal, but first an editorial note, because I'll get hung up to dry if I don't say it. In Craig, Colorado, they don't call it Craig, Colorado. They call it Craig, USA, and that's how they'll always reference it and always have. So just for let the record reflect, it's Craig, USA. And with that, Saigopal, back to you.
So for my next question, I want to touch on the conversation about mode shift, so getting people to use something outside of their cars. There are few more unifying experiences in the state than sitting on traffic in I-70. But transportation is also the largest source of CO2 emissions in the state. To meet the state's climate goals, Colorado's Transportation Vision 2035 set a goal to increase the number of Coloradans using non-car modes of travel. So that is people taking buses, trains, biking, walking, from 9.6% today to 19.2% in 2035. As governor, what would you do to get people out of their cars?
Senator Bennet, you're first up.
I think the most important thing we can do is to give people a robust system of public transit and also make sure that we're encouraging people to walk. That's something we didn't talk about earlier. That is a very important part, I think, of a healthy life. That's an important part of Colorado. Those are aspects of getting people outside their cars. I think it's also important to say that we have to invest in our roads and our bridges, in our transportation system. I think under the previous administration here in Colorado, there's been a big separation between transit and transportation that I'm not sure has been all that helpful to the traveling public in Colorado. I think we need to bring these things back together so that working with people at the local level, we can make more rational and more strategic decisions about what our investments in transit and our investments in our roads and bridges need to look like going forward, treating these things as separate, siloed enterprises. I understand the ideological reason for it, but as a practical matter, I don't think it advanced the interests of Colorado's economy or our citizens. And I think that when we find that we bring them together, I think we're also going to discover that they're going to better serve the climate goals that we have as a state as well.
Thank you. Attorney General Weiser, as governor, what would you do to get people out of their cars?
I'm going to pick up on Senator Bennett's point because people getting out of their cars and using less carbon connects our issues around climate, issues around housing, issues around transportation, issues around public safety, issues around water. We need our next governor to be able to address all of those areas effectively so that people feel safe walking in their neighborhood. Right now in Denver, there are a lot of people who feel there's not enough law enforcement to protect them. They might be afraid to walk in a neighborhood and not be in their cars. As you're looking at what type of development we can have, access to water is often a critical resource that we need to better manage. When you're looking at how we can build communities where people can walk, we're asking, are we building housing near transportation? And we need those sorts of incentives, something I'm sure we'll get to more. The answer to this question is a holistic solution, that we make sure that we have a government and we have a governing strategy that sees the need for a multi-mode transportation system, gives people different options that they can trust and that work for them. I'm committed to that type of governance strategy. Underlying all that is that I will always show up, I will listen, and work hard to deliver results for the people of Colorado.
30 seconds, Senator
I
Bennet.
also would say that we will not save our legacy transit assets unless we take a much more aggressive approach to building dense housing in the Denver metro area. We have to do that. We have to do that. And again, RTD will never figure out how to do that on their own. The folks that are interested in building housing will never be able to figure that out on their own. We are going to have to do it together. We are going to have to do it strategically, and we are going to have to refocus on those.
That's time. Attorney General Weiser, 30 seconds.
Did they really say Craig USA? Because
They call it
I've
Craig
been to
USA.
Craig a lot of times. I've not seen, where have you seen the Craig USA? Is that like the sign or something going in?
I just have a lot of customers who live in Craig, USA, and they've corrected me, so I'm correcting you.
All right. Well, I love about Colorado that we're all in it together and that we will find these solutions together. It's important to note that as we think about public policy around these range of issues, what works in Denver may not work in Craig. And part of the challenge is when some people say, don't put money into roads, what they're hearing in Fort Morgan is, you don't care about me.
That's time. I'm going to turn it back to Saigopal, who's got some follow-ups.
Yeah, thank you. So as a follow-up, I want to focus in on transit agencies. And in particular, are there any changes or policies that you believe need to be implemented at RTD, Mountain Metro, or any of these other transit agencies in the state to increase ridership?
Is this a follow-up? Saigopal, great. So this will go back to Senator Bennet.
Well, I'd say, first of all, that I want to say that I think RAFTA is one of the greatest transit agencies, public agencies. I think that anybody in rural America that wants to find a place where they're doing an amazing job, I would say RAFTA in the Roaring Fork Valley. I also am really excited at the prospect now in far northwest Colorado from Steamboat, I think all the way to the border, where they're coming together to build a regional transit organization.
I'm going to turn it back to Attorney General Weiser.
We pick up where I was in the last point, which is as we look at these transit organizations from the standpoint of state government, my mindset is how can we help you be successful? How can we effectively make sure you're doing the best work you can? The state has this incredible power of convening to make sure that lessons that we might learn in one area are shared somewhere else. As we look across these transit agencies, that's the mindset that I'm going to bring. That's the track record I'm going to bring.
That's time, and I would just say, I think the folks of Craig USA would probably be thrilled. It's come up 5 times during this conversation. And if you haven't been to Craig USA, there is a jewel box of a museum. It's the Museum of Northwest Colorado that's in the old Armory building there, and it alone is worth the trip. And so with that, back to
And by the way, on the way to Craig, stop at the Granary in Hayden. I strongly recommend it.
Okay, for my next question, I want to go and touch on funding. So RTD, the Colorado Department of Transportation, and the Colorado Transportation Investment Office control how billions of transportation dollars are spent and which transportation projects get built. Should the state allocate a larger share of transportation funding to multimodal projects?
This one will go to Attorney General Weiser first.
The state has been putting serious investments in multi-mode, in different types of transit. We got to make sure that that rubber is hitting the road and being used effectively. As we look at this pie, we've got to be ensuring we're making the right investments, we're doing it transparently, and people can trust that we're getting things done. This point that was raised earlier directly connects to this point. It is critical we build public trust, we bring the public along, and the public understands the value, the purpose, and how it is affecting them. My worry right now is we're at a shaky time with that public trust. We've got to make sure we're meeting this challenge. People are seeing government work effectively, and this is an area where we need to make sure we've got a governor who knows how to execute. A governor who's been working at the state level, knows our government inside and out. I bring that experience. I will be ready to hit the ground running on this on day one.
Senator Bennet, to you, should the state allocate a larger share of state transportation funding to multimodal projects?
I think that that we should be thinking about this comprehensively, as I said earlier. And if there are multimodal projects that are effective and are going to give us a great rate of return, absolutely they should be our priority, I think, over all other investments that we make in transportation and transit. But we need to make sure that's true about them. The Attorney General raised the question about whether people have questions in their mind about whether the money's being well spent. Every single person who gets on a bus in the metro area has questions on their mind about whether it's being well spent. And the reason for that is that it's not being well spent. And that is true. And we are beyond time of diagnosing the problem or adding another bureaucrat or doing another study. What we need to do is lean into the work that is not analogous to work we've done on opioids or analogous to work we've done on this, but is actually work that I have done on transit, on transportation, on housing, to make sure that we're moving the state forward in the next 10 years, not just coloring inside the lines again and wondering why our kids continue to move out of the state, businesses continue to move out of the state, and we don't have the resources to be able to support the public infrastructure that we need, whether it's transportation, transit, or our public education system, just to name a few.
That's time. I'd actually like to use this next portion for a quick follow-up because I think it warrants it. Many of us in the room worked on Senate Bill 21260, which was a restructuring of the allocation of funding for transportation in Colorado. There are conversations I'm sure we've all been pulled into about the reallocation of those 260 funds into road construction. I'd like to ask the candidates, point blank, would you support or oppose a ballot initiative that would reassign funds from Senate Bill 21260? Attorney General Weiser.
It's important that we follow through on the commitments we've made and the plans that we make. We've got important work ahead that we have set up. We've talked about that work around Front Range passenger rail, around mountain rail. We got to make sure we see that through. That's critical to the next governor. As for whether or not my work on opioids is on point, it's 100% on point. We've got to work with state and with local officials together. I know how to do that.
I'm not denigrating it at all, Phil. I'm proud of the work that you did. I just want to say that, you know, grasping for evidence that you have the experience that we need right now at this moment to actually deal with the challenges that we're facing, I think that's the thing that I'm calling a question on. And I think given the attacks you've made about my votes in the Senate, which I'm happy to come back to, that's fair game, and that's the only issue that
Let the record reflect I'm the one who broke the format on that one, not these guys, so that was my bad.
Well, I want to come back. Is the point I would say is, for the last 8 years, I'm working at the state level. I'm working with state and local officials. I'm working with all leaders in state government, knowing our state inside and out, on these range of issues that fit together, public safety and water. You've been working for the last 17 years at the federal level.
It's such a complete miscomprehension of what my job was. The Diagonal Highway in Boulder, that's funded because of work that I did. The work that I did on the
That's
Southwest
time
Chief, the
on
work
this
that
question.
all the other things we're talking about today, every single one.
So
is
I'm
an
going to give it
instance
back to
of
Saigopal,
working with people at the local
who now
level.
has to talk over these guys instead of me. Your ball.
I don't envy that position at all. I actually want to ask a quick follow-up here on RTD and CDOT. So both of these agencies have operating budgets in excess of $1 billion. What qualifications or skills do you believe is important for the next set of leaders of these organizations?
Senator Bennet.
I think they need to understand that at this point in the state's history, really the most important priority is to make sure that our kids and our grandkids are going to be able to afford to live in Colorado. And that goes for what CDOT is doing. That goes for what RTD is doing. And for me, I would put a very high priority on having people leading each of those organizations who are people that understand the importance of having their counterpart
That's
in
time.
a room
Attorney
to
General
make
Weiser.
these decisions together. Instead of sitting...
That's time, Senator Bennet, sorry.
One of my advantages is working at the state level in an executive role. I don't have to tell you what I will do. I can tell you what I've done, which is what I will do. 4 core values we have at the Attorney General's office. We're principled. We do the right thing. Second, we serve the public. Third, we're innovative. And fourth, we're collaborative. And fifth, I'd say, we get stuff done. I want my leader, when we hire someone at CDOT and every other agency, to live those values, to make sure the people of Colorado
That's
know that
time.
they're
I'm going
being
to hand it
served
back to
effectively.
Saigopal. Thank you.
Okay. Funding is a super important topic, and my next question continues in that realm. So Colorado has an ambitious list of transportation projects that are at various stages of planning or execution. The Mountain Rail from Denver to Craig, USA. The Front Range Passenger Rail project along the I-25 corridor, as well as multiple bus rapid transit projects on state highways on Federal and Colorado Boulevard. Given that the state faces a budget crunch of about $1 billion a year, where do these projects fit in your list of priorities? And would you be open to raising taxes to completing these projects?
Attorney General Weiser.
We've got a range of challenges that we've got to get our arms around, looking at different possible ways we can prioritize, we can support, we can get them done. I don't have that master plan right now, but what I can tell you is the way I'm going to develop it is the way I've led, which is to make sure that we're really bringing people together, we're listening hard, and we're working together. This is a crucial moment for Colorado, and one of the challenges right now is a lot of people feel they haven't been listened to. haven't been brought into the conversation. There can be creative solutions out there of how we meet the range of these challenges. Our future depends on getting this right. I'm committed to delivering that leadership, to doing it in a way that people know they can trust, and to knowing that we're in it because we want to serve the people of Colorado. That's how I'm going to approach that question.
Senator Bennet, same question. Given that the state faces a budget crunch of around $1 billion this year, where did our ambitious transportation projects fit in on your list of priorities, and would you raise taxes?
It's going to be a challenge. So let me say, first of all, that I think that we've brought $1 billion of transit projects to Colorado just in the last when I say we, I mean me. In the last 4 years alone, $65 million to Front Range, to the Front Range Rail, $150 million to the BRT project on Colfax, more than $30 million to the RAFTA project over many, many years, and another $7 billion in terms of transportation dollars as well. That is a lot of money that has given me the opportunity to work with people every single day at the local level in Colorado to ask them, what is it that you need to be able to achieve your dreams for your children and for your community? That is the work that I've been engaged in. It's just that I believe that I'm going to be able to do it better now from the governor's office than from the senator's office. The good news is you get another senator either way and you get another governor either way. So that's a great outcome. And we are going to have to take on Tabor in this state if we are going to invest in our transportation, if we're going to invest in our transit. There is no other way to do it. This isn't about listening hard or not. It's about actually dealing with the reality that people are struggling with every single day. Because if we don't, I guarantee you we're going to be sitting in this ballroom 10 years from now, and people are going to wonder why.
I'm afraid that's time.
We
have to
look
give it
like
to the
California.
Attorney General for 30 seconds to respond.
Let me tell you how I'm going to change Tabor. It is going to start with listening, all across Colorado. Just like I did when I showed up to address the King Soopers merger with Safeway. I held 19 town halls across Colorado, and we stopped the merger. People were listened to and heard, and I heard them, and together we forged a plan. We need to get rid of some of these restrictions that we have in our budget, but we need to build trust with the people. The way I'm going to do it is not some top-down solution, it's bottom-up.
That's time. 30 seconds, Senator Bennet.
I actually said that I would begin my discussions on Tabor in rural red Colorado. I said that, I think, virtually the day that I got into this race. And the reason is that I do not think we are going to be able to create a durable solution to the problem unless we engage the entire state in what that solution is going to actually be. We cannot skip that step. That is a critical part of building the coalition we need to be able to fund our transportation,
I'm going to turn
our
it back to Saigopal now. Thank you. And just for the benefit of the audience, they can see the time that I can see, so we're all playing by the same rules, just to be fair.
I want to move on to my next question, which is a bit more somber, and just, I'll lead with just a very morbid fact. Car crashes each year, at least in this past year, they killed 701 people in the state of Colorado. That is about 2 people a day. This number is up about 30% from a decade earlier. Lower top speeds and safer street design are proven methods to reduce the number of fatalities. Yet, Colorado continues to spend more money on Vision Zero initiatives without redesigning its roads. What concrete steps will you both take to make our roads safer and reduce deaths on the roads?
This will go to Senator Bennet first.
I think that there's a lot of concern across the state and among the public that's traveling our highways, as well as in our communities in rural Colorado and urban Colorado, that our road fatalities are too high. And I think we need to work with communities to make sure that that where it's feasible and advisable to make changes to the speed limit and other kinds of things, we should take that on as a possibility. The use of technology, I think, is going to continue to be an important part of how we deal with this. And we've also got to make sure that in communities where they're more and more and more reliant on bicycles and on pedestrian walkways, that people have the kind of protections that they need to be able to have to get from one place to another in our society.
Attorney General Weiser.
In our office, we have something called the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board. We review every death by domestic violence, asking the question, what can we learn from this? How can we save lives? And we've pushed practices and legislation directly to respond to what we've learned. That's what we need with traffic fatalities. Every death is a warning sign. It is a call to action. I want to make sure we hear that call, that we have a system designed to capture that we didn't have a road here that was safe, or lighting that was sufficient, or there are other improvements that are necessary to save lives. We need that public health mindset about traffic safety, just like we need it around gun violence prevention. I will bring both as governor.
Senator Bennet, 30 seconds. Great. Attorney General, anything else you'd like to add? I think we're good. Great. Saigopal, I think you can do one more here if you'd like, or a follow-up.
Yeah, I would like to ask a quick follow-up here on accountability for fatalities on our roads. Should there be any mechanisms for accountability, and who should be held responsible when traffic deaths keep rising?
Attorney General Weiser.
As you trace through situations and you have learning, it's going to depend on the situation. Let me use the example I gave before about domestic violence fatalities. In some cases, there were prior warning signs that were disregarded. For example, if someone's driving on the road and they're a distracted driver and they've had prior incidents and they're driving again and they kill somebody, we need to ask, was there not enough accountability taken after that first incident? If someone is driving on a road and the road is not sufficiently lit and they don't see somebody and someone else died previously on that road because it wasn't lit, we've got to ask, why didn't the warning signs get taken? So it's going to depend on the situation, but what we need is a commitment to vigilance, a commitment to continuous improvement. That's the sort of leadership I've been bringing as Attorney General, and I'm prepared to bring as the next governor.
Saigopal, do you want to ask that question again to Senator Bennet?
Yeah. Given the number of fatalities going up, what mechanisms for accountability will you help drive, and who should be held responsible when traffic deaths keep rising?
I mean, it can't be ignored for all the reasons that Phil said, and I think it is important when we run down the, that's probably a really bad choice of words. It is really important that when we know what the cause is, what's happened, that not only is somebody held accountable, but that we learn throughout the entire system how to improve it and how to make it better. I also think the good news is that we are on the cusp of many, many technological changes and others in the way people locomote themselves through transit and through transportation that actually ought to be able to reduce fatalities in a significant way, not just in Colorado, but across the country. And I think that's something that we want to be a leader in here in this state.
Thank you. So at this point, I have the belief that no debate is complete without a lightning round, especially when we've had so much substance here. And I appreciate that some of these questions can't be reduced to simple yes or no's. And despite that, I'm going to be villainous here and ask that we reduce these complex problems to simple yes or no's. So each candidate has next to them a paddle with a color on it. Obviously, green will be yes, red will be no. I'm just going to ask you these questions. You each will have 90 seconds at the end of this conversation to speak up as to shed some context on each of those questions. So I will start. Number one, should wolves be... No, I'm kidding. Number one, the HOME Act is one of the top priorities of YIMBY and other housing groups this legislative session. It already passed the House and is now headed to the Senate and would make it easier for nonprofit developers, schools, and transit districts to build new housing on the land that they own. If you were currently the governor, would you sign this bill into law? Yes or no? This is a yes or no. You've got a paddle.
I think it's enormously promising, and I'm very proud.
Yes or no? Yes or no? You can always defer to raise a paddle, I suppose. That's yes for both candidates. Thank you. Next up, on average, and I really hate being the bad guy, guys, you know that, but it is what it is.
You seem to be enjoying it.
I am intimately aware this might be the last time either of you take my phone calls. On average, over 30,000 eviction filings are filed each year in the state. Should the state prioritize increasing funding for rental assistance? Yes or no? Yes from both candidates. In the previous legislative session, Representative Woodrow introduced a bill that banned the use of algorithms to determine rent. Would you have signed that bill, which Governor Polis vetoed? A yes from Attorney General Weiser, and a yes from Senator Bennet. Here's a tough one. Are you open to raising revenue or fees to increase funding for subsidized housing? Yes from Senator Bennet, yes from Attorney General Weiser. Housing is the largest expense for most households in the state. Is there any form of rent stabilization that you would support in any form in Colorado? Yes from Attorney General, yes from both. This is a rough one. Should apartment buildings in Colorado be allowed to ban dogs? No from Senator Bennet.
I mean, this hurts me a lot because I love dogs, but there could be reasons that are legitimate, so I give them the right.
Yes from Attorney General Weiser. Front range passenger rail is likely to go to the ballot this year. Will you ensure that a passenger rail service from Pueblo to Fort Collins is built? Yes from Attorney General Weiser. Yes from Senator Bennet. Question number 8. Does Colorado as a state have too much parking? Yes from Senator Bennet.
Depends where.
Yes or no?
Sure, in some places there's
Yes,
too much.
from Attorney General Weiser. Many studies have shown that increasing vehicle lanes does not result in lower congestion. Does Peña Boulevard need another lane of car traffic? Yes from both. Hey, remember what I said about kicking you out? Okay. Next up, on the same note, does I-270 need another lane of car traffic? Yes from Senator Bennet.
Maybe.
That's not an answer. No answer from Attorney General Weiser. Okay. Both of you live near Colorado Boulevard in Denver. Will you continue the Polis administration's efforts to build BRT on Colorado Boulevard? Yes from both candidates. Will you pledge to take public transit to the Super Bowl when it comes to Denver during your governorship?
Hell yeah.
Yes from both candidates. And with that, I turn it to Senator Bennet if you have 90 seconds if you want to shed any context on any of these questions.
Are we at the end? Or
You'll have closing remarks after this.
the only context I would shed on these questions, which I'm not even sure I can remember. I'm kidding. I can. Is that when I try to do yes, no rounds with my children, it inevitably results in their pointing their middle fingers at me. And now I have a new appreciation for that. So
I did not write these questions.
Thank
I just want to be clear. These were not my questions. These were provided to me by the organizers. Attorney General Weiser, you've got a couple minutes.
Well, I'll just say that before Senator Bennet said he's happy to explain some of his votes for cabinet picks like the folks I mentioned. So if he's willing to explain it, I want to hear it because I don't understand it.
Great. Well, with that, I think we're going to move on to closing statements. And I'd like to sort of sharpen the point on some of the things we've talked about today. In 10 months, one of you is likely to be the next governor of Colorado. I'm sorry, Barb Kirkmeyer. I hope you're not in the room. But statistically, one of you is likely to be the next governor of Colorado, and you would serve, she's going to vote against a bill of mine now because I said that, and would likely serve 8 years in that office. If you are looking down sort of the long scope of history, what would you want your administration's legacy to be in terms of housing and transportation, and how will you measure your success? And Senator Bennet, you elected to go first on this one.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for being here. Phil, thank you very much for being here, and thank you to the organizers. I would want my legacy to be what I started with, which is to be able to say that in Colorado that working people didn't have to spend more than 30% of their income on housing, whether they're renting housing or buying housing. For me, that is an indication about whether or not we are living in a just society. And today, we are not living in a just society. When teachers need to rely on lotteries to know whether they can stay in Colorado and teach or have to move back home to Michigan or some other place, that's not a just society. When there are people that are traveling an hour or two away from their children that they're trying to raise to get to work, but are on a transit system that is not working as efficiently as it should or as cheaply as it should, that is not a just society. I think that every single dollar that somebody has to spend in addition to 30% of their income on housing is a dollar they're not spending to build a middle-class life, to build a future for their children, to be able to save a little bit so that someday they may be able to afford to house themselves. And we all need to care about that because it doesn't just affect the people that can't pay those bills or are paying those bills by going without food or going without medicine or going without heat for their children. It's a testament of who we are as a society. And we are living at a moment in America where the entire thing is at risk, our democracy and our economy. No one is riding to our rescue. Colorado is in a position, I believe, to set an example for the rest of the nation. There is no other candidate running for governor in this country who is running on the platform of making sure that working people don't have to spend more than 30% of their income on housing. I hope you'll support my candidacy for that reason alone. Thank you for having me today.
Attorney General Weiser, same question. If elected governor and assessing your legacy, what would success look like on these issues?
I just want to thank all of you for coming, for YIMBY Denver's leadership, people like Rob Greer, David Pardo, and others who have been pushing this critical conversation in a very substantive, responsible way. We have critical work to do as a state in this moment. It is going to be essential to have the right moral courage to stand up against a lawless, bullying administration, picking on our immigrant communities, taking on the LGBTQ community, and picking on Colorado because the president doesn't like our mail-in elections and the fact that Tina Peters is in jail. To that, I say I'm defending our state sovereignty and fighting for the values of a nation that I love and fighting for a Colorado that I love and that I have seen in my work as Attorney General come together to meet the challenge of this moment. Those challenges, they fit together, as we've talked about. Our housing challenges, our transportation challenges, our public safety challenges, our water challenges, education challenges. We need leadership prepared on day one across the board to meet the moment. You can look at my Colorado Blueprint, all 100 pages, or just read the executive summary at philforcolorado.com to get a deeper sense about how we do this work. You can look at the range of local and state current and former officials, far more than Senator Bennet, who believes in our campaign that shows up for all of Colorado. We, together in Colorado, can meet the challenge. I've shown what that type of servant leadership can look like, bringing innovative problem solving across our state, working on these issues. The measure of our success is whether we change the population decline. We are at a moment like we were in the late 80s, early 90s. We had leadership then, like Roy Romer and Federico Pena. We met this challenge, and we built a growing and dynamic economy. We can do it again, and I'm proud to say both Roy Romer and Federico Pena have endorsed me to be Colorado's next governor. Thank you all very much.